بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. We're wrapping up the chapters of prayer, Alhamdulillah, and Ibn Ashir, and then we expect to quickly breeze through, inshallah, the chapters of the other pillars. So this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us to connect ourselves with doing our acts of worship in the same way they were done and passed down from the children of the Sahaba, may Allah be pleased with them. That we have, alhamdulillah, the deen we are following is the same Sabilul Mu'mineen, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. That goes back, alhamdulillah, all the way back to the students of the greatest generation. As we said, the students of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq's daughter, Aisha radiallahu anha, and the students of Umar radiallahu anhu's son, Ibn Umar, his students, that's what the Maliki madhab is based on. So simply we are connecting ourselves to be able to practice the deen in an authentic way. Because if every one of us went and started making our own opinions and everything, everybody would be following something different. And then if the scholars, alhamdulillah, put their heads together and agreed upon and united upon this methodology of practice, alhamdulillah, this is what is between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we have done our job. Okay. Now is the section of Sujood al-Sahw in Ibn Ashir. Let me bring the microphone. The prostrations of forgetfulness, the Sujood al-Sahw in Ibn Ashir, for missing a sunnah by mistake or out of forgetfulness. It is a sunnah to make before the terminating salam 2 sujoods, and also for missing more than one sunnah. So he's saying that the way to make up missing sunnahs out of a mistake or forgetfulness, it is sunnah to make before the terminating salam 2 sujoods, and also for missing more than one sunnah. This is if the sunnah is stressed. What are the sunnahs that are stressed? Sinani, shinani, kada, jimani, ta'ani. The silence, the surah after the Fatiha, 2 sheens, the tashahhud that you do, the tahiyyat that you do after 2 rak'ahs, and the final tahiyyat. Jimani, the jahr, reciting loudly when it's appropriate to recite loudly, and the jalsa, the sitting after 2 rak'ahs before beginning your third. Ta'ani is the takbir and the tasmi', which is to say takbiratul intiqal, to say Allahu Akbar as you're moving, and the tasmi' that you say Sami' Allahu liman hamid as you're moving. These are the main stressed sunnahs. As if you entirely leave the loudness or the silence, then the sunnah is entirely gone. It is agreed upon generally if you leave it for 3 ayahs of the Fatiha, or if you add it, then you've done enough for sujood. If you add sound where you're not supposed to for 3 verses or more, And if you recite silently where you are supposed to read loudly for 3 verses or more. If you realize, anyways, you go back and you correct your mistake, and then you do 2 sajdas after the salam. But anyways, so he's saying, let's take it step by step. I'll say it his way. The way according to the book can be a little bit confusing, so I'll try to break it down afterwards, inshallah. For missing a sunnah by mistake, it is sunnah to make before the terminating salam 2 sujuds. So you finish your tahiyyat, you're about to say assalamu alaikum and exit out of your prayer. He's saying if you missed 2 sunnahs, then it's recommended for you, it's sunnah for you, it's emphasized that you should make 2 sujuds to make up for your mistake. So basically you say Allahu Akbar, you'd prostrate, then you'd sit, then you'd prostrate again, then you'd sit and end your prayer after saying the tashahhud and not the salawat. He says this is if the sunnah is stressed, and he who adds to his prayer by mistake should prostrate after the salam. Likewise, meaning with 2 sujuds, and then sitting down and saying At-Tahiyyatullah, Zakiyatullah, Tayyibat, Salatullah, Salawatullah, Assalamu alayka ya Nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Recommended, or you could just sit there and then salam out of your prayer without the salawat. So basically he's saying if you subtract certain things from your prayer, then you should prostrate 2 prostrations before you salam out of your prayer. If you have added to your prayer and not subtracted, then you should salam out of your prayer as normal, then do 2 more sujuds, another tahiyyat and salam. So there's the sujood before the salam for missing, incomplete, and then if you do it after, if you've added to your prayer, then you do the sujood after. And really charts, they help a lot with this. And generally I teach it on a whiteboard. And I've gone over this chapter in detail several times. In Akhdari it is much clearer than in Ibn Ashar. So far we have 2 types of sujuds. The one that's before for missing sunnahs, and the one that's after for adding fards accidentally or forgetfully. The one before, this is very important, is called qabli. So if you speak Arabic, you know that qabl means before. So qabli. And to make it make a little bit more sense, you're doing it before your salam because your prayer is not yet done. So you make up for your mistake, then you do your salam. So you do the sujood before the salam. However, if your prayer is complete and you've added more, your prayer is already done, so feel free to salam out of it. So if you want to write a general rule of thumb, do not salam out of your prayer if you have forgotten 2 or more stressed sunnahs. And generally the stressed sunnahs, sometimes they are actually a mix of more than 1 sunnah. So we'll talk about all that inshallah. How about if you both subtracted from your prayer and you've added to your prayer? Then you should do the salam or the sujood before you salam out of your prayer, because your prayer is still not yet complete, even though you've added to it, but it's still an incomplete prayer. So you shouldn't seal it with your salam. You should not salam out of a prayer that is missing more than 2 sunnahs. So if you've understood that point, mashallah, great, excellent. Don't salam out of a prayer that's missing 2 or more sunnahs, even if you've added to it. And doing the 2 sujuds, if you've both added and subtracted, you shouldn't do 2 sujuds before the salam and 2 sujuds after the salam. The 2 sujuds before the salam, they suffice for both the addition and the subtraction. All right. So that's what it means to, and give missing a sunnah more weight if it happens along with adding. So if you're missing sunnahs and you added and you're going to do the sujood, then do the sujood before the salam. So if you owe a qabli, the sujood before the salam, but you forget and you salam out of your prayer, no worries. You have a couple minutes, as long as you didn't move, you didn't change what you were doing, you didn't like pick up your phone and start talking to somebody, you didn't get up and start chatting, and you didn't leave the place of your prayer, like leave completely. You remembered within a minute and a half, 2 minutes, don't worry. Just wherever you're at, say Allahu Akbar and re-enter into your prayer. And do those sujoods. If they were supposed to be before the salam. If the sujoods were supposed to be after the salam, then it doesn't matter when you remember them. You remember them a year later, do them. So the ones before the salam, they're necessary for the prayer to become valid. The ones after the salam, it is a little bit more lenient, so it doesn't have to be necessarily connected with the prayer if you forgot. Especially if you forget 3 sunnahs or more, then not doing the sujood will invalidate your prayer. So that's why if you don't do it within a small amount of time, then it's disconnected from your prayer. You've finished a prayer, you're signed, sealed, and delivered something that was missing a significant chunk of it, and you didn't make it up by sujood. Therefore, what you sent was deficient, and you have to repeat that prayer. Okay. But if you remember that you added to a prayer, even after a year, how can it happen after a year? Maybe like there's a recording of you praying somewhere, and you realize, wow, I didn't do the 2 sujoods after, even though I added this. In that case, you're like, okay, well, no problem. You make sujood right then. All right. Of the PDF, we are on line 149. The Imam carries the responsibility for both of these sujoods off of the follower. What does that mean? If you're praying behind the Imam and you add to the prayer, just go back to wherever the Imam is and you're fine. If you subtract from the prayer, really you can't, because you're following the Imam, aren't you? So just align yourself with the Imam and your prayer will be fine. And if you make a mistake, don't worry. The Imam, you don't do any sujood for it. The sujood is for the Imam and those who are following him. For the Imam's mistakes, the Imam and the people who are following him make up those mistakes with the sujood. As far as the person praying by themselves, yes, their sujood is made by them. Then he says, formal prayer is invalidated with intentional hard breathing or talking. So generally, if it's if any letter sound comes out, right? Nafkhin, that's nafkh, it's blowing. So he says intentional hard breathing. Nafkh is, so it kind of makes the sound of the letter fa. So that's why it invalidates the prayer. As far as if you are like, if you're not making the sound of a letter, then it's hard to argue that your prayer is broken. Or talking, it's the same thing. You're like, shh. That's all going to break your prayer. Intentionally. Unless you have the intention to correct your Imam. So if you spoke to correct your Imam, or the Imam asked something, and then you correct what he asked, like after the prayer, like he's like, did we do 2 rak'ahs or 3 for Maghrib? And you're like, oh no, we just did 3. We just did 2. Or you just say 2, or you indicate. And sometimes when you're correcting the Imam, it's you can do that. It is also invalidated by being busied away from a wajib action of prayer. As in, for example, something takes place to prevent you from doing the fard. Right? You see a child that's about to fall into something dangerous, and you have to run after them, and stop them. You see somebody who's stealing your stuff, right? So as soon as that thing takes place, which necessitates for you to leave, don't worry, your prayer is gone. And if you missed a sunnah from being busied away, then repeat the prayer as a mandub action within the allowed repetition time. So if you missed a sunnah from being busied away, you couldn't do a sunnah like, for example, sitting down after the tashahhud. So you just did your prayer as quickly as possible and couldn't do the sunnahs because, for example, you did that for Maghrib because you were like running late or something like that. And then it's like, okay, now you're in the daruri time of Maghrib, and Maghrib is still in its repeat time. So you repeat within the repeat time. The repeat time for Dhuhr and Asr is until Hanafi Asr, or until like about an hour after regular Asr. I'll just say that. And there's a little bit of a discussion in regard to when the isfirar actually occurs. Is it Hanafi Asr? Is it actually yellowing? Is that the same thing? Is it not? Anyways, about an hour after Asr. If that time passes, then the reasons that make it recommended to repeat Dhuhr and Asr, it's no longer recommended. It's okay, don't worry about it. You prayed to the wrong Qibla by accident, and now it's almost Maghrib. You prayed both Dhuhr and Asr to the wrong Qibla, don't worry about it, you're forgiven. It's okay, your prayer is accepted, and it's not recommended for you to repeat. So it's not like you made a mistake, and it's like, okay, it's better for you to repeat in perpetuity. No. If you make a mistake, don't worry about it, just go on with your life. You prayed for years wearing a leather bracelet that you didn't know was haram leather, or pig leather, or whatever. You didn't realize that it was that. You thought it was given to you by a Muslim who came from a Muslim country. You're like, man, I didn't know it was haram leather. Okay, well, now you know, stop wearing it. And all those prayers, it's not recommended for you to make them up. So he says within the allowed repetition time. That's the allowed repetition time. Salah is also invalidated by losing one's ritual purity. So if you lost your wudu, your salah is gone. Adding as many rak'ahs in the prayer originally should have contained. So if you're praying subh prayer, which is 2 rak'ahs, and you're like, wait a second, am I on the first rak'ah or the second rak'ah? Okay, now I'll count it as if I'm on the first rak'ah. Then you pray again and you're like, wait a second, did I just pray another rak'ah or am I still on the same rak'ah? So now either you're on the 4th rak'ah or you're on the 2nd rak'ah. So there's a possibility that you have doubled your prayer is gone. For Dhuhr, it has to be a possibility that you're on the 8th rak'ah. For Maghrib, 6. So if you're possibly doubled your salah, then khalas, that salah is gone. And really work on that really only happens to a muwaswas, and the muwaswas then shouldn't actually be adding rak'ahs. They should be like, am I 1 or 2? Okay, I'm on 2. They should assume that they're on the higher amount, and they should not add more to their prayer or their wudu or anything. If they constantly get these whisperings, did I do enough? Am I in this? Am I in that? Okay, you did it, no problem. Yes, you have wudu. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yes, you're on the 4th rak'ah, you're fine. And it's actually haram for them to go back and repeat things and add them, because they're listening to the shaitan, and that actually enables them to fall into having OCD and the shaitan pulling them this way and that, making them behave in ways that are irrational, thinking that they are righteous and doing a good thing by adding more and more to their prayer when they shouldn't. Laughing out loud, breath comes out, laughing, or any outward sound that you're making laughing, or if you're like very heavily smiling and suppressing laughter for an extended period of time, your prayer is invalidated. Intentionally drinking and eating, intentionally adding an extra physical fard action, such as intentionally adding a sujood, intentionally vomiting, remembering a missed fard prayer. If the number of missed prayers is less than 6, or remembering that one did not perform a necessary part of a previous prayer. So if you are praying Asr and you remember, oh, I haven't prayed Dhuhr yet, then that invalidates your prayer. There's a difference of opinion here, and this note added because I don't think I've mentioned this before. If you're praying with an imam, behind an imam, then you shouldn't cut off your prayer because of the difference of opinion, regardless of which opinion you take. So in the Maliki madhab, often you're going to find these situations where there's a difference of opinion. You can do something that satisfies all the opinions. Watch. So you're praying behind, this happened to me one time with Sheikh Sadiq rahimahullah, I believe. That somehow I was traveling, I was going back to a million places, and then I go in and praying in his house, and I prayed Asr, and then I realized, wait a second, I haven't prayed Dhuhr. And then I think I did cut off the prayer, I'm not sure exactly. And then I mentioned to him, he was like, no, what you should do is continue praying with the imam, because following that opinion, then going back and praying Dhuhr, and then repeating Asr. Because your prayer is valid according to a strong opinion, keep on praying because you're praying behind the imam, then go back and pray. But if you're praying by yourself, cut off your prayer, then pray Dhuhr, and then pray Asr. So remembering a recent prayer, you've missed less than 5 prayers, you're caught up, you don't have like a whole bunch of prayers you've missed in your life, you're caught up on your qada, then remembering a missed prayer, if you've missed less than 6 prayers, would break your prayer. And there's some more. As I mentioned, there's difference of opinion here. Or of course, you remember that you missed a fard part of a previous prayer, which then it's the same thing. That prayer is not valid. Okay. Salah is also invalidated by missing a sujood which had to be performed before the salam in a previous prayer due to missing 3 or more stress sunnahs. So when we say 3 or more, that means, so he's trying to teach 2 things at once here. The thing that I already mentioned, which is if you have missed 3 or more sunnahs, now that invalidates your prayer if you do not do the 2 sajdas qabli, unless you're a person who gets waswas, unless you're a person who gets whisperings from the shaitan. Now, so he's implying here that invalidated that prayer. So therefore, if you did that in one of your, so basically, in other words, he's not teaching anything new. He's just, that's not different than that a fard is missing from a previous prayer. If one exits the masjid or place of prayer, or a long time passes before one makes the necessary prostrations of forgetfulness. So if you exit the masjid, as I mentioned, or a long time passes, 2 minutes plus passed since you said salam out of your prayer, and you're like, oh wait, I needed to do the qabli, I needed to do the sujood before the salam, too bad, that prayer is gone. So if you didn't remember and you started praying in the next prayer, and then you remember, oh wait, I was supposed to do qabli, then yes, that prayer is gone. So therefore, this prayer is gone, unless you're praying behind Imam. We mentioned what you're supposed to do. Then line 134, he says perform, or 154, he says perform a missed wajib part of the prayer when you remember. So as soon as you remember, you're standing, you're like, wait a second, I did one sujood. I didn't do the sitting after that sujood, nor the second sujood. So you sit, then do the sujood, then continue with your prayer. So you go back to whatever missing fard you have in that rak'ah. So if you missed a fard in the same rak'ah you're in, you go back to that mistake. If you've moved on to the next rak'ah by going into bowing, and then now you've left bowing to the point where your hands have separated from your knees and they cannot reach your knees, then now you cannot go back to that mistake. You just erase that last rak'ah. And you add another rak'ah to the end. So he says, perform a missed wajib part of the prayer when you remember, but if an act of bowing comes in between your remembering and the missed action, cancel that rak'ah with the missed wajib part, and a build on the rak'ahs is now allowed. Add another rak'ah. So this is similar to a person who made salam too early. Right? He says salam after 3 rak'ahs for a dhuhr. They're like, wait a second, you did 3 or 4? He's like, so he remembers, he just re-enters the prayer, and then now he adds another rak'ah, obviously. Or somebody says at the end of the prayer, they prayed 4 rak'ahs, they're like, man, in this Isha, it's Isha. They're like, in the first rak'ah, you didn't read the Fatiha. And he's like, then he should add another rak'ah, just like that. Okay. And the rak'ah he should add is loud and with a surah. Actually, I'm not sure about that part. So should he act like a rak'ah is missing and add? No, but then this is bina, so this is building. So then the sujood qabli would take place. Anyways, this is similar to how a person who made salam too early acts, but he should enter a prayer with another takbir. So he says Allahu Akbar and re-enters the prayer. So make sure when you re-enter the prayer, you say Allahu Akbar to re-enter yourself into that sacred state of prayer. The ihram, takbirat al-ihram. So you should say Allahu Akbar and re-enter the prayer like that, not just keep going with your prayer. And for the rest of the rak'ahs. And know that if a long time passes between the prayer and his remembering, it will obligate invalidation of the previous prayer and he must begin anew. So whoever doubts about doing a fard should build on what he is sure of and prostrate after the salam. So like we said, you doubted, did I do 3 rak'ahs, did I do 4? Did I do 1 sujood, did I do 2? For the average person, it counts as if you did the lesser amount. I wouldn't say for the average person, for the non-muwaswas, because the average person does have waswas probably nowadays. Because your waswas generally goes away once you gain knowledge. So, and the average person doesn't really have much knowledge. So, for the non-muwaswas, for the person who does not have waswas, which is the whisperings of the shaitan, where they're like, oh, do this and add this and so on. And this is a rare occurrence for them. So they're like, okay, well, did I do 3 rak'ahs or 4? It counts as if they did 3. Did I do wudu or not wudu? Did I just break my wudu? You just broke your wudu. Did I do this twice or 3 times? You did it twice. So you just add and no problem. If it happens to you again, the next day even, then it's like, okay, I have waswas, and you stop and you don't do it again. But yeah, again, so if it's a unique occurrence, then it's like, okay, well, I'll just add. So whoever doubts about doing a fard should build on what he is sure of. So, okay, I'm sure I did 3, I'm not sure if I did 4, so let's just say I did 3. And then he should prostrate after the salam, because now he either did the right amount or he added. So his prayer is complete, salam, then do sujood. Then there are some rules of recitation which are, but if he has waswas, by the way, then he should not add anything. Whatever he doubts, he should consider that he has done. And then after he finishes the prayer, he has the option of doing 2 sujoods after the salam or not. So he can do it if he wants, but he doesn't have to. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Then there are some rules of recitation which are different and must be clarified for the person who missed a fard action in the first 2 rak'ahs but only realized after the bowing of the 3rd rak'ah. As they build on the actions of the prayer and also keep to the normal recitations, in this case, what will happen is the 3rd rak'ah, which was recited without a surah, will now be considered the 2nd rak'ah. And for this reason, the 2nd rak'ah is now said to be missing a surah, and thus the person must make sujood forgetfulness before the salam in this case. Also, the person who remembers the middle sitting after his hands have already left the ground is requested to perform sujood before the salam. But not if he remembers the middle sitting while his hands are still in contact with the ground. So for line 137, it is a bit complicated. So as they build on the actions of the prayer and also keep to the normal recitations. In this case, what will happen to the 3rd rak'ah? So if you are on your 3rd rak'ah and you remembered while you remembered that you remembered you missed a fard in a previous rak'ah. And he says specifically after you have, it should say, after you get up from ruku'. Really, this is hard to explain without the board. So, if you missed a fard from your first rak'ah, and you remember on your second rak'ah, your first rak'ah is cancelled, and your second rak'ah now becomes your first rak'ah. And then now, instead of being on your second, you're on your first. No problem. If you remember on your 3rd rak'ah that that there was something missing from your second or your first rak'ah, then that first or second rak'ah gets cancelled and now you're on your second. So if you're still standing, you can recite loudly because now you're on your second. You can add a surah because you're on your second. You can do the tahiyyat once you're done because you're on your second. But if you've already gotten up from ruku' on your 3rd rak'ah, then khalas. Yes, this 3rd rak'ah just became your second, but even though you're on your second, now you read silently and you didn't add a surah, even if it's dhuhr or asr, where it's silent anyways, you didn't add a surah after the Fatiha. So now you're missing sunnahs. So now instead of doing the sujood, you're going to add a rak'ah to your prayer. But still, you're also missing the surah that was supposed to be in the second rak'ah because your 3rd rak'ah, which didn't have a surah, now became the second. If you understood it, you understood it. If you didn't understand it, then inshallah make that your challenge to understand it. So one way I can explain it is we'll talk about big rak'ahs and small rak'ahs, okay? The rak'ah number 1 is a big rak'ah. It has a surah in it. Rak'ah number 2, and it also has a loud recitation if there's loud recitation. Second rak'ah is a big rak'ah. It can even have tahiyyat after it. 3rd rak'ah is a small rak'ah. 4th rak'ah is a small rak'ah. If you're on your first rak'ah, or you're on your second, which is big, and you realized you missed something on your first. A big one just got canceled, but now you're on your second, so a big one took its place. So then you're going to keep going as if you're on your first, then you're going to do another big one, then you're going to do two small ones, so you have two big ones and two small ones. You're fine. Your prayer is not missing anything. If you've already now cemented that you're doing a small rak'ah, how do you do that? By reciting silently and not having, or in any case, not having a surah. So you did a big rak'ah, then you're doing a small one, and you realize halfway through the small one, after you've already left ruku', now you can't go back and read surah after your Fatiha because your Fatiha is already done and your ruku' is already done. You're doing a small rak'ah, now you realize, man, I missed something on my second rak'ah or my first rak'ah. I missed a fard. That rak'ah gets cancelled, so now you're left with one big rak'ah, and now the small one that you're doing now becomes the second one, and you're going to add two more small ones. So you're left with a prayer with one big rak'ah and three small ones. I think that's an easy way to visualize it for people. So because you've remembered something in the first or second in a big rak'ah, after you're already in the small rak'ahs, that means a small one will take the place of a big one. Your prayer is deficient, and therefore you do the sujood before you salam. Is that a clear way to explain it? Please tell me in the chat and Zoom, please. I know it's kind of like a childish way to explain it, but it comes across, hopefully. All right, alhamdulillah. Perfect. So, so let's read it how he has it. So he said, as they building is bina, which means you keep adding on top of the prayer. As opposed to qada, which you're making up to things that you have missed. So as they build on the actions of prayer, and also keep to the normal recitations, in this case, what will happen is the third unit, meaning rak'ah, which was recited without a surah, meaning it's now a small rak'ah, according to that example, will now be considered the second unit. So a small one just became a big one. And for this reason, the second unit is now said to be missing a surah, and thus the person must make the prostrations of forgetfulness before the salam in this case, because their prayer, once they reach the salam, oh, I haven't fully fulfilled my prayer, I'm missing two or more sunnahs, so I should do two sajdas to make up for those mistakes before salamming out. Same goes for the person who remembers the middle sitting after his hands have already left the floor. So after two rak'ahs, what's the middle sitting? It's after you finish two rak'ahs, before you get up for the third rak'ah, we sit down and we say Tahiyatullahi wa salatu tayyibat, or Tahiyatullahi zakiyat. That's called the middle sitting. The middle sitting is a sunnah. If you leave it intentionally, your prayer is fine. So teaching a new convert how to do the prayers, and you tell them this prayer is 4 repetitions, this prayer is 3, this prayer is 2, and you leave it at that, and you don't tell them about the middle tashahhud, and you don't tell them about saying Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Tahiyatullah, anything. They're leaving all of those sunnahs and mandubs, and they're just doing their fards. Even maybe not doing the Fatiha. If they're a person who can't absorb that much, like day 1, maybe day 2, day 3, you tell them, okay, now hold this and recite it. Otherwise, just tell them, okay, when you start your repetition, you stay quiet for 20 seconds. Anyways, so the middle sitting is not fard. It's sunnah. So if you're leaving your second rak'ah and you accidentally stood up, you don't sit back down because you're already standing. If you sit back down, now you're going to stand again and you're going to have added a standing. You're going to negate the standing that you're already doing. So there's a difference of opinion at what point, if you sit back down, your prayer will be invalidated. And the agreed upon is if you have read 3 ayahs of the Fatiha, then for sure your prayer is invalidated if you sit back down after that. But you shouldn't sit back down regardless. So basically continue with your prayer. Now because you are missing something, just do the 2 sujood before you sit down. This is probably the most common mistake in prayer that people make. But not if he remembers the middle sitting while his hands are still in contact with the ground. You haven't actually gotten up. Your hands or knees are still on the ground. Then stay sitting. Then sit back down. There's no need to prostrate. The prostration to forgetfulness or anything. Your prayer is totally fine. All right. That's it for that. I can pause here and leave Jum'ah for next time. Yes? We have which chapters? We have Jum'ah and the conditions of the Imam, and then we're done with prayer. All right, we'll leave that for next time, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. So now, actually, for everybody who's been attending class for years or for months, now we're entering into completely new territory. I don't think we have ever talked about Jum'ah before, and we haven't gone through the chapter of Zakah like that. So, mashallah, congratulations for reaching this point in Ibn Ashar. Now we're beginning uncharted territory. So that's great. Assalamu alaikum. Does adding a surah at the third rak'ah need a qabli or a ba'di? We said removing sunnahs, 3 or more, means it's absolutely necessary. 2, meaning you can and it's recommended to do so. 1 sunnah missing, you don't do the qabli for it. Ba'di is when you add a fard, or you add the sunnah of reciting loudly in a silent prayer to at least 3 ayahs of the Fatiha. So a surah at the third rak'ah actually is not adding a fard, nor is it adding loudness to a prayer. So therefore, it doesn't necessitate any qabli or ba'di. And your prayer is perfectly fine. Any other questions?
جزاك الله خير أبو بكر.
وإياكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.